Manitou Chapter 5. Part 2, Silver and Wolfsbane. Werewolf Glow Up by Maria de Los Angeles Virgen.
A strange sensation crept over me as I looked away from the microfilm machine. I glanced around the room, but it was quiet. The library was nearly empty, with only a few patrons scattered among the halls. I turned toward the window on my right, and that's when I saw him. Not the vampire, but the man from the park, the one I had given up hope of ever seeing again. My heart skipped a beat as our eyes met, and in that instant, everything else faded away. Though I was technically on the first floor, the library was built on a slight mound, so when I looked out, he was below me, staring up at me with a look that made my heart race. He was wearing a hat, much like the one he had worn when I first saw him at the park. But this one looked brand new. It was clean and polished suede. The large brim reminded me of the hats the local natives wore, except his had no feathers or beadwork, only a silver hatband adorned with red turquoise and coral stones. Red coral had always been one of my favorite stones, but I could never afford it. It was too expensive, a luxury far out of reach. For a second, the memory of the now removed shackle entered my mind. The stones were very similar. Instinctively, I rubbed my naked wrist. His hair was longer than I remembered, now braided down his back, showing his full face and with chiseled features. He looked exquisite. There was no other word for it. Another difference, too. He was cleaned up, younger and fresher looking, not at all like the dark figure who had hypnotized me that night. Yet, despite the unease lingering in the back of my mind, I found myself utterly captivated by him. When he smiled at me, the world faded away. The sudden rush of emotion was so overwhelming that I nearly fell back in my chair. I realized I was staring at him, and embarrassment flushed my cheeks. Instinctively, I moved away from the window, hiding from his gaze as if it were just too much to bear. Why was I feeling so shy? Was it the intensity of his stare, the way it seemed to pierce through all my defenses? I wasn't used to being seen like this, laid bare without warning. Normally, I kept my guard up, choosing when and how to let people in. But now, with one smile, all my carefully built walls crumbled, leaving me vulnerable in a way that terrified me. Then, out of nowhere, I felt a gust of wind, and before I could react, warm, strong arms were around me, steadying me.
Did you fall? Did you hurt yourself?
He asked, his voice filled with concern. I turned to face him, my breath catching in my throat. Up close, he didn't have fangs, nor did his eyes glow with that eerie red light. He just looked like a man, a breathtakingly handsome young man who smelled absolutely divine. How had he reached me so quickly? He was just outside a second ago. Luz stirred in my mind, purring like a contented kitten. It was so unlike her that I felt a twinge of confusion. She still hadn't told me what happened when we encountered my supposed father, the vampire, the day before. Her memory, she claimed, was blocked for some reason as well. Strange, considering we were two complete entities. But what puzzled me more was how uninterested she seemed in that meeting. You'd think encountering another supernatural being would have excited her, but no. Only this man seemed to hold her attention. Whoa. I finally managed to say, trying to regain my composure. I realized my mouth was hanging open, and I quickly shut it, hoping to hide my surprise and the growing attraction I felt. He was standing so close to me, and the scent of him, whatever cologne he wore, was intoxicating. Without realizing it, I found myself leaning in closer, my face almost brushing against his shirt buttons. It was like being under a spell, as if I had been given a dose of the most potent catnip, and I couldn't help but be drawn to him. I could feel Luce's presence growing stronger, her eyes glowing with an ethereal red in my mind as he held me. We were only touching at the arms, yet there was something deeply sensual about his proximity. When I looked up into his face, the connection I felt was undeniable, as if I had known him in another life. It sounds ridiculous, I know, but they say you recognize your soulmate when you meet them. And right now, staring into his hazel eyes, that's exactly what I felt. He was the one. I just knew it. Luce's voice echoed in my mind, a single word repeating over and over, "Mate, mate, mate." She was relentless, urging me to say it out loud, to acknowledge what she already knew. "Mate," I whispered, but my voice was uncertain, and I saw the flicker of hurt in his eyes as the word left my lips unenthusiastically. I immediately regretted saying it, feeling a deep sadness welling up inside me, an emotion so strong it nearly brought me to tears, and it took a lot for me to cry. I stepped back, putting distance between us, and sank into my chair, burying my face in my hands as the tears came, unbidden and unwelcome. "Stop it," I whispered, this time directing my words at Luz, willing her to stop howling in my mind, to stop amplifying the sorrow that was threatening to overwhelm me. I felt him hesitate, his presence a comforting warmth nearby. He paused, probably unsure of what to do after hearing me speak. When I finally looked up, I saw the concern etched on his face, and I quickly shook my head, trying to reassure him. "I didn't mean you," I said softly, hoping to alleviate the worry in his eyes. He slowly walked over, pulling up a chair to sit across from me. He didn't touch me this time, but he was close, so close that I could feel the warmth radiating off him. We were sitting in the back of the library, a secluded spot that I was thankful for. I didn't like crying, especially not in public.
I'm sorry for how we met the first time, Magdalena.
He whispered, his voice heavy with regret.
I swear to you that I am no monster.
He paused, then continued in a louder voice.
I swear to you that I would never hurt you.
His eyes pleaded with me to believe him, but I couldn't bring myself to meet his gaze. My friends call me Mags, not Magdalena or Magda or Lena, just Mags, I said, the only words I could mutter at the time. Why was I being so bitchy to him? Oh yeah, because it took him 2 weeks to find me. Why had he ghosted me for so long after dropping a bombshell the way he did? He made me think I was nuts.
Okay, Mags it is. I do hope to be one of your friends.
He said, looking into my eyes. My instinct told me he wanted to be more than friends, but he wasn't going to admit that just yet. Despite my chaotic emotions, his words and the deep resonance of his voice soothed me. For some inexplicable reason, I felt safe with him. This stranger who seemed to know so much about me already. Now I realize why I was angry he was gone for so long. I miss this strange and weird connection. I managed a small smile, trying to push past the turmoil inside. "Please wait," I said, my voice trembling. I'll be right back." I hurried to the restroom, needing to wash my face and pull myself together. As I splashed cold water on my cheeks, I reached into my small purse and pulled out my bottle of lithium. I hadn't taken my dose today. Maybe that was the problem. I swallowed 2 pills quickly and made my way back to him, hoping the medication would settle my erratic emotions. I know I have been through a lot these past few weeks, but that was no reason to fall apart over a simple introduction. To my surprise, he was still there, standing over the work I had left on the table, examining it with quiet curiosity. When he saw me return, he smiled, but it quickly turned into a frown. He then walked over and grabbed my purse. "Hey," I protested as he reached in and pulled out the bottle of lithium. He opened the cap, but the moment he sniffed the contents, he recoiled, coughing as he quickly recapped the bottle.
"What are you doing with Wolfsbane?"
he demanded, his voice tinged with anger and worry. For a brief moment, his eyes seemed to glow, not with the eerie red I had seen before, but with a deep, oceanic blue. His voice, too, had changed, growing deeper, more rugged, and distinctly animalistic. I wasn't scared, but I was definitely startled. "Wolfsbane? What do you mean?" I asked, thoroughly confused. "Isn't that a plant? A poisonous plant?"
"Yes, it's poison, my love. It could kill you,"
he said, tossing the bottle into the trash with a look of utter disdain.
"Why are you taking that? Who gave it to you?"
His sudden switch from friend to my love shocked me, but I was growing angry at his attitude. I was about to walk away, but before I could, a passing security guard approached us, his gaze suspiciously fixed on Andy. Yes, his name was Andy. It had been so long since I last saw the man from Buckland Park, but I never forgot the name he gave me. He looked so different now, cleaned up and respectable, yet still enough of a mystery to draw the guard's scrutiny.
"Is everything all right here, ma'am?"
The guard asked, his tone laced with authority as he glanced at Andy. Ugh, I hated authority and police more than I hated macho men, though, and wanted him to leave. "I'm fine," I replied quickly, but my eyes were locked on Andy, trying to understand what had just happened. Andy, however, seemed on edge, his posture tense as he stared down the guard.
We were just leaving.
He growled, his voice thick with impatience. He reached out his hand to me, and for a moment, I hesitated, but then I took it, feeling the warmth of his skin against mine, and the connection was electric. Goosebumps erupted along my arms, a visceral reaction. As we left the library, I retrieved my bike from its stand and walked alongside him down the street. "Let's go back to the park," I suggested, needing to be somewhere familiar, somewhere where I could try to process everything.
Sure, anything you want.
He agreed with a smile, though there was an underlying tension in his voice. The short walk to the park was anything but quiet. Andy spoke rapidly as if he had a wealth of information to share and only a few moments to get it all out. Or maybe he was just nervous, excited even. I couldn't tell. All I knew was that I was too overwhelmed to respond. Lithium was poison. How could that be? And if Andy wasn't a vampire, then what was he? Was he a werewolf like me? I felt like a kitten, both wary and mesmerized by his presence, wanting to flee at the first sign of danger, but also drawn in, soothed by the sound of his voice. Despite my confusion, his words made me happy, though I barely understood half of what he was saying.
I know it's been a long time since we've met. Weeks, but I promise you, it was for good reason. I had to figure out the best way to help you.
He explained, his tone earnest. "Help me?" I echoed, trying to grasp the meaning behind his words.
Yes, and help myself.
He replied and then launched into an explanation that left my head spinning. He told me He was a werewolf from a northern Siberian pack, cast out by his uncle and labeled a rogue for a long time. He said he had undergone a ceremony to cleanse himself of a curse. Then he explained that the pills in my purse weren't medicine at all, but wolfsbane, a deadly poison to werewolves. He urged me never to take them again, saying they could kill me or my wolf. The security guard, he added, was a ghoul, a vampire's servant, a reanimated corpse, and warned me to stay away from him. He continued, saying that my wolf and I were not yet one, which was why I couldn't recognize the smell of wolfsbane. He apologized for not noticing it earlier, claiming he was too enthralled by my scent of jasmine and roses. His words were dizzying, a mix of fairy tales and reality, and I struggled to keep up. Part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Okay, I'm bipolar. Is this dude schizo? Lou seemed totally engrossed in his story, understanding everything he said with ease. As for me, I was drowning in a sea of confusion, wondering how much more of this I could take. Maybe that's why I had cried in the library. Maybe it was all just too much. As we walked, his voice became a comforting background hum, and despite my fear and uncertainty, I found myself drawn closer to him. There was something about Andy, something I couldn't quite put my finger on, that made me feel safe, even as my world seemed to unravel around me. We sat beneath the sprawling branches of an old oak tree, the evening shadows lengthening as the sun dipped below the horizon. The cool grass beneath us was a welcome relief from the day's heat, and the shade provided a quiet, secluded space where we could talk, or at least, where he could talk. I had been listening intently at first, trying to absorb every word, but at some point, I found myself drifting. My focus shifted from his words to the way his expressions changed as he spoke. I noticed how his fangs seemed to grow and shrink depending on his emotions, as if they were an extension of his mood, just like eyebrows arching in surprise or knitting in worry. It was otherworldly, mesmerizing, and I couldn't help but wonder how I appeared to him. Did he see me as ordinary, or was I something more in his eyes? Normally, I despised women who were completely infatuated with a guy, losing themselves in the process, yet here I was, utterly spellbound, hanging on every word, not because of what he was saying, but because I was lost in the depth of his eyes. He could have been telling me the secrets of the universe, or confessing that he was an alien from another planet, and it wouldn't have mattered. All I could do was stare entranced. Eventually, I laid my head down on the grass, turning onto my side to face him, silently inviting him to do the same. He fell silent as we lay there, not a foot apart, our faces close enough that I could see every detail, every subtle shift in his expression. He seemed to take this quiet moment to study me as well, his gaze tracing the contours of my face. Gently, he reached out with one arm and brushed a stray lock of hair from my face, his touch sending a shiver down my spine.
I forget that you're still so new to all this.
He said softly, his voice calm and dreamy.
It's probably very overwhelming. Maybe you'd like to tell me something about yourself?
He smiled, his eyes warm.
Or we can just sit here quietly and reflect for a bit. Whatever you want to do.
I returned his smile, glancing down at the grass as I considered his offer. There were so many things I wanted to ask him, so many questions that had been swirling in my mind since the night we first met. But he had already answered most of them, explaining in depth the mysteries that had plagued me. Should I mention my father and the shackle he had placed on me? Should I tell him about the owl I had seen? Or maybe that I had recently come to understand and love my wolf, Luce? But something told me he already knew about Luce.
Of course he knows about me. I can sense his wolf too, even if I can't see or speak to him just yet.
Luce admitted. Why not? I asked her with my mind, curious about this new revelation. I could sense Luce's frustration, but instead of howling in my mind, she sighed.
I don't know exactly why, I just know that I can feel him when Andy touches you. So please, touch him again. Maybe I can find out why.
Her plea was almost desperate, and instinctively I reached out to take Andy's hand, holding it firmly as if that would somehow help Luce understand. My wolf is asking me to touch you, I said, filling in the silence. Andy smirked and shook his head as he understood. I felt him circle his thumb around the top of my hand, and the electricity jingles were back again. We lay there in silence, and I couldn't decide if I liked it or if it made me uncomfortable. Like I've said, I haven't felt this vulnerable with anyone in my whole life. Only one question kept pressing at the back of my mind, demanding to be voiced. Why do you look so different? I finally asked, breaking the quiet. Andy ran his free hand nervously through his hair, a small, happy laugh escaping him. I could see he knew I was attracted to him, and for a moment, I thought I saw a blush on his cheeks.
Well,
He said, his smile turning flirtatious.
I don't know about how I look, but I'm looking at a beautiful raven-haired maiden right now.
His words made me blush, as sappy as they were, and I quickly clarified. No, I mean, you mentioned something about no longer being a rogue. Is that it? His expression grew serious as he studied my eyes.
Yes, I had the curse removed.
He said quietly.
I did it for you. For us.
I looked down at the buttons of his shirt, the same buttons I had buried my face into earlier at the library. Is that why you smell different too? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Or is it a new cologne? His smile widened, revealing his pearly white teeth and those fangs that seemed to dance with his emotions, elongating suddenly to a menacing length. I couldn't help but wonder why I didn't have fangs like his if I was supposed to be supernatural too. A memory surfaced then from when I was 13. I had an extra set of canine teeth growing above my regular adult incisors. The dentist called them supernumerary teeth, and he performed surgery to remove them so I could get braces. He said my teeth were overcrowded, and the memory brought a tinge of sadness with it. I reached out, fingers brushing over the soft cotton of his off-white shirt. The fabric contrasted beautifully with his golden brown skin, making him look as if he had spent hours in the sun. I leaned in closer, inhaling his scent once again, letting it wash over me like a warm, comforting wave. I felt him breathe over my head, inhaling my scent as well.
Werewolves don't wear cologne.
He said, his voice low and intimate as he scooted closer to me on the grass.
We want to smell the real thing, not the chemicals or pheromones of another animal.
I looked up at him then, noticing how his lips parted slightly, and I felt an overwhelming urge to kiss him. He was teasing me with his words, and I didn't know what to think about it. I imagined tiny fangs extending from my gums, a thirst rising within me, a hunger that was both physical and emotional.
I want to smell him too. His wolf.
Luz's voice echoed excitedly in my mind.
Let me get a whiff.
How do I do that? I asked aloud, forgetting for a moment that Andy could hear me.
Do what?
He asked, confusion flickering in his eyes. But then his expression changed, his eyes widening in sudden fear as he grabbed me by the arms.
Don't.
He exclaimed, his voice urgent and filled with panic.
Don't let your wolf come out. You're not ready. You could die.
His eyes darted from my wrist to my face, and I could tell he knew about the bracelet, about what had happened before. What? I gasped, feeling his panic infecting me. My heart began to race, and I could hear it pounding loudly in my ears. My voice sounded different, deeper, and it was then that I realized what was happening to me. A searing pain shot through my abdomen, so intense it took my breath away. I hunched over, clutching my stomach, unable to speak as the shock of it paralyzed me. The pain came in waves, each one more powerful than the last, as if my body was trying to push something out from deep within my soul. Through my squinted eyes, I saw Andy's face, twisted in fear and helplessness, but he seemed so far away. His voice was muffled, drowned out by the pounding in my head. But then, a sharp, high-pitched whistle cut through the chaos, a sound so piercing it commanded my attention. It wasn't just a whistle. It was an order, a command that reverberated through my entire being. Stop! The pain eased almost immediately, and in my mind's eye, I saw Luce, no longer fighting to come out but instead curled up, her fluffy tail wrapped around herself as if the whistle had lulled her to sleep. She was out cold. I gasped for breath, clutching Andy's shirt as if it were a lifeline, only now realizing that I had ripped off every button. His lips were slightly puckered, and I understood. It was he who had been whistling. But the sound had already faded, though his lips remained pursed for a moment longer. He gently stood me up, holding me close as I cried into his chest, my tears soaking into the remnants of his shirt. His voice was soft and soothing as he whispered sweet words, calling me baby. Normally, I hated that term, but coming from him, it felt right. I melted into his embrace, grateful for the comfort he provided. So much for a smoother second meeting, I thought bitterly. I hoped I hadn't scared him away with my hysterics for good, though I wouldn't have blamed him if he wanted to run. We stood there for what felt like an eternity, and when I was finally calm, we walked over to a hill overlooking the pond, watching the ducks settle down for the night. They weren't afraid of us this time, quacking and honking as they nestled into the reeds by the water's edge. We didn't speak for a long time, both lost in our thoughts. Finally, I broke the silence, looking up at him. Maybe I should have kept the bracelet on, I said, my voice tinged with regret. Andy looked at me, then gently lifted my arm where the silver bracelet had once rested. He cupped his hands around my wrist as if he could somehow bring it back. I could see the wheels turning in his mind, and I knew he was piecing together the last few days' events. Were you the one who put that bracelet on me? I asked, remembering the look in his eyes earlier. He hesitated, then looked down at the ground, his voice barely a whisper.
Yes.
Why didn't you say anything? I pressed, feeling a mix of confusion and anger. I thought my dad had given it to me. I thought he was trying to harm me. Andy sighed, his expression pained.
I'm sorry,
He said.
but I wasn't trying to trick you. I came to visit you in your room the night you returned from seeing your father. I couldn't wake you. You were enthralled.
He paused, his jaw tightening as if the memory filled him with anger.
I followed you, you know. all the way up to his house and again when he brought you back down in a car driven by one of his ghouls. I had to keep an eye on you, had to make sure you were okay.
Suddenly, the memory of the big black wolf on the mountain flashed in my mind. The wolf had been him, watching over me just as he said. He had been telling the truth all along. That was going to be my second question, I said, looking up at him wearily.
Ask away.
I wanted to know if you were a werewolf or a vampire, or both like you said I was. He looked shocked. He just stared off into space for a bit.
I'm all werewolf. It's just that.
He said, shaking his head.
I'll have to tell you why I appear more vampy another time. But the bracelet, it was for your protection. Silver is more than just pretty jewelry.
He explained, his voice gentle as he rubbed his thumb over my wrist.
It does many things. It repels vampires and ghouls, compulsions and abilities, so you can't be hypnotized. But most importantly, it suppresses wolves' shape-shifting abilities. It can kill us too, if taken internally by way of knives or bullets. But that's why I made you a bracelet. Something pretty to grace your wrist and remember me by. I kind of half thought your wolf would at least remember me and tell you I'd been by to visit when you woke up.
I pulled my arm away, frustration bubbling to the surface. She doesn't remember anything about that night either, I said. And even if she did, I couldn't hear her. It was hurting her. My voice trembled with emotion. It weakened my wolf so much I couldn't hear her voice. Only her whimpers. That's why I had it cut off. Andy's face fell, his expression filled with regret.
It wasn't the silver alone, my love,
He said softly.
It was the combination of the wolf's bane in your system and silver. It was too much for you to handle together. I'm sorry I didn't realize it sooner. Someone is apparently poisoning your wolf with it. I think it may be your father trying to kill off your wolf so your vampire abilities can grow. From what I can tell, you can only be one or the other. You cannot have both. If you lose your wolf, you will lose your connection to me, your mate. And as selfish as that sounds, I cannot let that happen.
His eyes pleaded with me, filled with an urgency that made my heart ache.
I don't know why I didn't think about it before.
Andy continued, his voice steady but filled with frustration. The man could talk, that much was clear. And while his words were meant to be reassuring, I needed him to listen to me just once, to really listen.
Usually your wolf would have emerged when you were 13. But since you're a hybrid, it would have killed you.
Andy explained, his eyes searching mine for understanding.
He's been trying to delay the shift for as long as possible, probably by feeding you wolfsbane in small doses, ever since Luce awakened.
His words made my head spin. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood abruptly, needing space, needing air. The pounding in my head grew louder with every revelation. Why couldn't I have just had a normal father? Why did everything have to be so complicated? Sure, this is probably every goth's dream, but now in the midst of it, it was just overwhelming. I thought about Carmen, my social worker. Was she one of those ghouls Andy had mentioned? Luce had warned me not to trust her. Could she have been the one poisoning me all along? After all, she was obsessed with me taking the quote, unquote, lithium. Then my thoughts turned to my father, the man I had only just met. Andy seemed convinced he was evil, but how could I accept that? He was my link to the world, my only parent. Yes, he was a vampire, but did that automatically make him a monster? I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. No, Andy, I shouted, pacing along the hillside, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and confusion. So you're telling me my father is trying to kill Luz? I looked up at the sky, at the pale stars beginning to twinkle, at the trees swaying gently in the evening breeze, anywhere but at Andy's face. I couldn't let him distract me, not now. I reached into my bag, which lay on the ground near my bike, and pulled out the silver bracelet. I stared at it, conflicted. Should I put it back on? He would have killed her earlier, don't you think? I said, my voice rising. If that were the case, he would have killed my wolf the moment she emerged. I was infuriated, but not necessarily with Andy, more with the world that had lied to me my entire life. Why are you able to wear silver? I demanded, my frustration bubbling over. You have silver on your hat, and the silver necklaces and rings as well. You say you're also a werewolf. Why can you wear it? My whole life felt like one big lie, from my case manager to my foster mom, even down to my dentist. Who else knew the truth about me? You know, I continued, cutting him off from something he was gonna say. I had an extra set of fangs when I was 13, Andy. My voice was shaky. They were called supernumerary teeth. My case manager sent me to the dentist, and they were surgically removed. Was that my vampire fangs, or were they my werewolf fangs? I was pacing now, a small path worn into the grass beneath my feet. And the braces? Were they silver too? Have I been secretly shackled my entire life? Andy gasped, running a hand over his chin as he shook his head.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
He stammered, his voice filled with uncertainty. Then, in one swift movement, he was in front of me, his hands gently but firmly holding my jaw. He slipped a finger into my mouth, feeling along my gums. The gesture was intimate, almost sensual, but I pushed the thought away, not wanting to believe he might compel me if werewolves had that power too. After a moment, he stepped back, his expression serious.
He had you defanged. He was trying to stop the vampire transformation, I believe.
He said, his voice heavy with the weight of the revelation. What do you mean? I demanded, my voice breaking. What part of me was defanged? My vampire self or my werewolf self?
Well, I don't have all the answers,
Andy admitted, his eyes locked on mine.
but I think Werewolves have two sets of fangs, werewolf and vampire fangs, double canines. For vampires, their teeth are everything. They can't grow them back. It's how they feed, how they survive. As wolves, we regenerate and heal, and if we lose teeth, we just grow them back, but vampires, they can't.
He paused, deep in thought.
That's why we don't age, at least very, very slowly. We live long lives, but we're not immortal. They say vampires are immortal, but believe me, they are not. Wolves don't wear metal or get tattoos because our bodies just metabolize the ink and heal over the wound unless you use a silver needle. And the silver I'm wearing? It's not really silver. It's white gold, some of it platinum, made silver-free. But even so, I have developed a high tolerance to the metal.
He looked down at one of his rings, slid it off, then gently placed it on my finger. It was a little too big, but it didn't tingle or feel hot, just cool on my skin.
I have to blend in now that I'm part of a community again. The stones are real, but they don't harm us. Don't you see what this means?
His voice softened as he reached out to me again.
This means you have to choose your wolf. With your vampire fangs gone, you may never develop fully into a vamp.
There was a hint of happiness in his voice, as if this was the answer to everything, but I wasn't ready to accept it. It wasn't fair that my choices were being stripped away from me. I stood there, arms crossed over my chest, staring at him as he continued talking. He spoke of how there had never been a hybrid like me who survived the shift. He told me about a boy he had met in the forest, left deformed and in agony after a failed transformation, and how he had ended his suffering. The story was too much for me to bear, and the emotions I had been holding back finally broke free. Deep down, I knew I could never abandon Luce. She was a part of me now, even if she had almost killed me just moments ago. But I couldn't let anyone else make that decision for me.
Maybe he tried to kill your wolf, but she was too strong. I'm not sure.
Andy suggested, his voice gentle as he tried to make sense of it all.
Maybe she went into hibernation to protect herself. Can you ask her? I don't know why he did this to you, but your vampire scent is very faint, my love. Yeah, I barely detected it the first time we met.
He's telling the truth.
Luz murmured in my mind. Well, look who's finally woken up, I snapped, my frustration spilling over. Luz just huffed and curled up in my mind, turning her back on me. Are you going to try to kill me again, Luz? Because that's all I need right now, I shouted, my voice carrying across the hills. I didn't realize how loud I had gotten until I saw the ducks and geese scatter in a panic. I wanted to fly away with them. I grabbed the bracelet from the grass and slid it on, ignoring the way the broken silver pinched my skin. The moment it was on, Luce went silent. I didn't want to talk to anyone right now, not even her. I started to mount my bike, hesitating for a moment to look back at Andy, but I couldn't bring myself to meet his eyes. I knew I was being self-destructive, pushing away the one person who seemed to care about me. Every time I got close to someone, I seemed to sabotage it. It was a defense mechanism. If I kept people at a distance, they couldn't hurt me when they inevitably left. But this time, I wasn't sure if I could handle losing him. I couldn't do that to him or me. It wasn't his fault. He was trying to help me, and I respected him for telling the truth, even if it made me angry. Reality had finally set in tonight, and it was harsh. I knew what I was now, and it wasn't a fairy tale. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. The near transformation made that very clear. There was no denying it anymore. I will never forget the pain from nearly transforming. It was a vivid memory forever etched into my brain. No amount of therapy would make me forget that. I needed to be alone to process everything. Andy had said I wasn't ready for my wolf to emerge, and he was probably right. But would I ever be ready? I needed him, in more ways than one, but I couldn't let him know just how much yet. Please don't disappear again, I said, my voice barely a whisper as I rode off. I just need time to process. As I pedaled away, I heard his soft reply.
I won't, my love. I'll bring you a new bracelet tomorrow, one that you can remove at will.
His words hung in the air as I rode away, a bittersweet promise that left me wondering if I'd made the right choice to leave so quickly. You better not abandon me again, I said to the wind.
Follow and help me bring more content to you.